Shana Tova, my friends. It's once again an honor and a privilege to stand before you at this season and get a chance to speak with you. My main theme for tonight involves taking a real look at who we are as a congregation. Before I get to that, though, I'm going to start by talking about one individual member as opposed to talking about the congregation as a whole. I'm going to take a few minutes and ask each of you to help me with a celebration of part of our history. After all, Rosh Hashanah is a time for reflection on the past as well as a look toward the future. Last year at this time, I shared with you the story of my first experience here at the Temple of Israel. To briefly recap and pay attention to these numbers, 26 years ago, as a newcomer to Greenville, I was invited to have dinner at the home of Nate and Shuggy Einstein, and then attend services with them at the beautiful new home of the Temple of Israel. It was a wonderful evening, one that solidified my belief that I'd found a new home in Greenville and eventually here at the Temple. And I really knew I was in good company that night when Nate, for the 24th then consecutive year, arose with his shofar in hand, made his way to the bema, and to quote Maimonides, bring forth the sound that said, "Sleeping ones, awaken from your sleep, slumbering ones, arise from your slumber, examine your deeds and remember your Creator." Really, that's what his shofar said. Now, it shouldn't take a mathematician to see where I'm going with this. My story happened 26 years ago, which was Nate's 24th time blowing the shofar, which means that as we start New Year 5776, this season marks a remarkable half-century of service in this function by Nate to his Temple of Israel family. Also, and somewhat disappointingly and sadly to all of us, Nate has decided that 50 is enough. This will be his last season sounding the blast we have all grown used to hearing from his horn. In honor of this occasion, I would like to ask Nate to join me on the beam. He has no idea that this is happening. First, Nate, I'd like to let you know that you are well loved by your own family and your Temple family. Tomorrow's luncheon after services is being given by your family in your honor, which all of us greatly appreciate and anticipate. Secondly, the many members of the congregation who in past years have donated money to help cover the cost of the luncheon have instead given well over $1,000 to the Temple in your honor in celebration of this achievement of 50 years of service. Finally, we would like to present you with this Chi certificate that comes from the Women of Reformed Judaism that reads, "In Jewish tradition, the world is sustained by three things: Torah, worship, and deeds of loving kindness, presented to Nathan Einstein by the Temple of Israel in honor of 50 years of dedicated and gifted service, awakening us to worship during high holy days with a resounding call from his shofar." Thank you. Between the rabbi's sermon and that, I've created a lot of hard acts to follow. Thank you, Nate, and thank you, Einstein family, for all you do here for us here at the Temple. Now I have to get back to the more normal part of a president's Rosh Hashanah address. And I bet you all think I'm going to talk about money. And since I feel like that's pretty much all I've spoken about since I became president, I'm going to try and keep that part as brief as possible, I promise. Here's the good news. We're off of life support. We might still be in the hospital, but the prognosis is better than it's been in a long time. Much of this is thanks to the incredible work of our Ways and Means Committee, headed up by Roy Katz and Debbie Roberts. Their committee exceeded almost all of our expectations. They set a goal of $10,000 for the recent rummage sale, and they hit it. Which is just unbelievable. And the work they put in, and their volunteers put in, if you were here, you had to be awed by it. Thanks to those funds, as well as contributions by our sisterhood and more than a few of you with individual donations and early payment of dues obligations, we're safe from having any cash flow issues in the short term until well into 2016. While this is certainly a positive, our problems are hardly solved. For us to remain on budget for the entire fiscal year, we need to hit our budget numbers from a variety of revenue items. This, of course, starts with the High Holy Day appeal. Please, all of you, please participate. It doesn't matter, the more the better, but it doesn't matter. Every dollar helps. Please give. Full participation in this appeal, as well as making your dues payments and helping Ways and Means activities and help with Ways and Means activities by our entire congregation, are necessary for us to continue on budget for the rest of the fiscal year. Much credit goes to Mitch Wolin, our treasurer, and Steve Gold, our financial secretary, and all those who assisted with the budgeting process in helping us recognizing our cash flow issues and adjusting to give us realistic budgeting numbers going forward. That said, we have a real problem, and it comes from a somewhat surprising area. One of the things I've never really worried about in this congregation is making sure we had enough volunteers to fill the roles we need to provide services and programming for our congregation and community outreach. For reasons we're not fully understanding, we find ourselves stretched to the point where we're struggling to fill necessary roles. In a very real way, this could have a financial impact as well. Everybody's got the blue book. Turn to the back. And on the back, the bottom part of it talks about Shalom Fest. For those of you who are guests or are new to our congregation, Shalom Fest is our biggest community outreach project every year. It's Greenville's Jewish festival run by volunteers from our congregation. It is also the single biggest revenue producer in our budget other than dues. Sadly, and alarmingly, Shalom Fest is currently at a very critical juncture. Despite the best efforts of Mitch Wolin and his committee, we have vacant slots for crucial committee chairs. When I say crucial, I mean the kind of committee chairs that we can't have Shalom Fest without. It makes us be teetering on the point of wondering whether we can have Shalom Fest. And if we don't have Shalom Fest, we're going to be back in a financial hole that's going to be very difficult to get out of. Please let us know through a call to the temple office or an email to Mitch or to me that you're willing to help us with Shalom Fest and serve as one of these committee chairs. It's vital to us both socially and financially. Now, volunteerism problems aren't just limited to Shalom Fest. For a long time, our temple has handled the need and search for volunteers in pretty much the same way. We ask on an e-blast that comes from the temple office through email, or we ask in the bulletin, and when that still leaves us with needs, what do? We go off to the telephone and we ask, pressure, beg, or in the finest Jewish tradition, guilt, folks to try to answer the call. But not only is this no longer working, it doesn't really always give us the right people in the right places, regardless. When we make those calls, who do we call? Well, we call our friends, those we know the best. And this means we end up with the same folks getting asked over and over again. And that means, the more folks, the more time people get asked, the harder it is to say yes, and the more we start hearing, I'm really burned out when we ask for the help. So we need to change that. As a board, we've been looking at a better way to do this. And for starters, we need to figure out some basics about our congregation. So now I'm back to that theme I talked about at the beginning. Who are we? Where do we live? What are our individual strengths, and in what areas do we have expertise? What interests do we have that we can tap into for temple programming? And who just wants to help, just wants to be asked to help? For years, when we've had people sign up as new members, we've had them fill out surveys that told us about themselves, their interests, their special skill sets, etc. In a decade or so, I'm not exactly sure when it was, a decade or so, we did a similar survey of the membership. But we failed to put that information into a usable format to allow us to improve the congregation and help us with volunteerism. And it's time we change that. So tonight I'm announcing my goal for the remainder of my time as your president. We're going to put together, using this newfangled gizmo they call a computer, a usable database of our congregation. We want to stop trying to fit square pegs into round holes when we ask people to volunteer for things, and actually be able to figure out who is best suited for what role and what task in what part of the temple. And it might be somebody we haven't met or spoken with yet, who's willing to help and who best fits those needs. But we need that information to figure it out. To make this work, we're going to need a little bit of everybody's time. We're still in the formative stages of this project, but you can expect that we'll be contacting you to fill out a form or an online form, hopefully, about interests and expertise, as well as some basic but not intrusive information about you and your family. Please take the time to help us with this so we can make this a success. We're convinced this will make our temple and our temple family stronger. It's also part of the plan to have a large map that we'll put in the temple office, or maybe it'll lead, we're not sure where we're going to put it, but the temple office is probably where it'll be, that we can show where we all live in the community. I'm personally really interested in this part of the project because maybe it's part of it that I'm a visual learner and I'm also a map lover. But I think finding out that other members of our temple family live near us will help us with carpooling, socializing, and giving assistance when help is needed. We'll make sure, though, that no one has to worry about any privacy issues. It's my hope that this database will expand our volunteer base and put the right people in the right spots. That said, it's not going to be done quickly because we want to do it right. We still need to fix this Shalom Fest problem immediately. So I'm going to revisit that as I end this talk. Please, again, if you're willing to help, step up. Mitch has done an incredible job running Shalom Fest the last year, and he wants to keep doing it this year, but he needs help. And let either one of us know that you're willing to step up and help us with that. If we have to cancel Shalom Fest, we'll be right back where we were, trying to figure out how to pay our bills when spring gets here. And next year, I can promise our president, once again, will be standing here talking about everyone's least favorite subject, our money troubles. Thank you all, and Happy New Year.